All right. Got a good turnout here, Jim.
Yeah.
43. Nice.
It's because he showed up.
Gary, I don't know where you, or excuse me, Andy, I
I
don't know
didn't
where
do
you've
it.
been. I've been the last 2 weeks. I've been here, dude.
I
You've been
was here
away.
2 weeks ago. I didn't see you, but I was not here last week. Or no, I was. Yeah,
You weren't here last week.
I was actually traveling. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have attendance records, Andy. You
I'm
were
with
more.
you.
All right. So welcome everybody. Let's kick it on off, Jim. We got some wins of the week from you or anybody out there, but let's start with you, Jim. Anything on your side you got?
The win of the week is the SaaS report. I know you guys are going to cover it. It's
Mhm.
awesome. Looking forward to everyone digging in and leveraging it, for their customers and their prospects.
Yeah, 100%. We're looking forward to that as well. Anybody have any fancy stuff you can share out there this week that you had come across your desk?
I can share something about Miles, who spoke, Miles Walker, who spoke at NerdioCon,
Sure.
and he was talking about how there's been a major increase in ransomware since 2023. One, two, that United States is only surpassed by the UK for the number of breaches that are occurring in the world by nation. Three, that the correct term is employee or the impacts for the breaches because of business email compromise seem to be poor user practices, and that's definitely something where SaaS alerts would help prevent and human error, right? Is they can't stop the human error, but we can help improve user practices around this. So those were it's up 15 to 45%. So user gullibility is what they're calling it.
Appropriately so.
It's interesting. Chip, how much of the user go what is it called?
Gullibility.
Gullibility.
Gullibility is the proliferation of identity. I wonder if we would have any, correlation there, right, with the breadth of different applications and
They just know more about you, Andrew. I mean, they can connect with you much more quickly because they know who your friends are, what you do. The breaches have all given them all this information.
yeah, no, I hear you there. I just meant from the proliferation of the use of identity in all these
Mhm.
different tools that we use today, Chip, and all
Yeah, I
these
mean,
options.
in a backdoor way, Andrew, I think you're making a point that the downside to SSO and OAuth is that people get used to just jumping into anything with their credential. And if that credential gets hacked, now
You're done.
the attacker has the keys to the kingdom. We've always thought in the community that it's better to use OAuth or SSO because you're not remembering lots of different credentials and trying to manage different logins. I still think that's the case. Um, the other half of your point is gullibility, or what I would call culpability on the part of the user, is they just, we haven't done a good enough job of convincing people of just how dangerous the environment is. Maybe we should get your friend and turn her into a poster, and she's the IT team and the dog is the user, and you got to stay away from the alligators. Just letting people know exactly how much threat is out there. They have to be suspicious of everything. And I always feel like a broken record when I'm talking about this on these calls, because I think all of us know this, right? We are suspicious by nature, or we probably wouldn't be in
Mhm.
these careers and have chosen these paths and have a passion for it. But that gullibility piece, yeah, it's the root of the problem.
Mhm. Yeah, no doubt. All right. Anyone else got any stuff for the week? Zach, you guys keeping busy there at Solutions Granted?
Always.
Any fun stuff you guys seeing this week or Corey?
Pretty much the same stuff, I think, from our end.
Got it. Got it.
So, a couple weeks ago, I talked about this Irish client that we were working
Yes,
with. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
the
So,
big one, right? A
yeah,
decent
yeah,
size one.
Yeah, so we did close them.
Awesome.
And we're onboarding them this month and helping them clean up their 365 tenant, which is a bit of a mess. And then they're also, so they actually licensed the whole K365 user and endpoint for their one site in Ireland, and then we might push it out to other sites, but we're going to start with about 60 devices in Shannon, Ireland, along with 300 user licenses. So it's a nice project.
Congrats. Congrats. Did you lead with some of those questions we talked about way back?
Yeah, so I was already kind of down that path, but I did summarize those. I clipped those out and I put those into a follow-up, kind of deck, and we had a conversation about it. And so, yeah, I think like their CFO definitely resonated with the business side of this, and I think that's really the point because obviously this is an added expense for them. Now we think we can consolidate some expenses and other things that they're paying for, especially on the endpoint side because we're going to replace out their antivirus and whatever they're using now for connecting to their servers and patch management, which isn't really working very well for them. So they'll save some money there, but overall it's more money, but there's almost no pushback. Because they see the value and we're already helping them clean up their tenant and finding all kinds of things that they didn't even know, users that had left the company and still active and things like that. So they don't have a strong IT team, and it's kind of like part-time managed. So this gives us the ability to give an overview and support them in addition to them, whatever they can take on from themselves. So it's still early days, but yeah, we're working through it.
Well, they should be happy paying more for the
Yeah.
risk you're mitigating for them. And
Yeah.
great job. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Anyone else? Quiet group today in early April. All right. Maybe it's tax because we're approaching tax day, Jim.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Andrew,
right.
I'll make an observation on why I think partner wins are getting quieter.
Yes.
Since we've introduced Fortify and the people who use it, which I think a lot of folks on this call do and use it correctly, the security posture management piece is where the security starts, and we often forget about that, especially with our name and our original mission being SaaS alerts. But I think that contributes to less successful compromises that people are reporting on this call and in other places saying, hey, we had a win, we caught somebody, communicated with the customer, cleaned them up. So I want to credit our Fortify team, which we rarely do on this call, for I think their contribution to this community, at least, having less of that activity.
Yeah. I think that's an awesome call out. Can you see an uptick in the usage of it, Chet?
Of Fortify? Oh yeah, absolutely. It's become much more pervasive. And some of that, is Ben gets credit for because obviously the folks that are subscribing to MSA services from SaaS Alert are getting professional management, including with Fortify, which was a big project for Ben and his team to pull off. But definitely there's a continual uptick on it.
Hey, that's interesting. That's awesome, Chip. Corey, like I know you can't give specifics, but like that's really interesting. Do you think is it poor? Is it lack of EDR? Is it any thoughts on why?
I'm I've been, all my time lately has been focused around webinars and creating new reporting mechanisms. So I don't have all of the exact specifics. I'm relying on my SOC guys for that. But what I'm seeing more commonalities are easier entry points, more exploitation of vulnerabilities that are happening.
Okay.
There's just far more, we're seeing far more campaigns happening compared to what we saw most of last year on the endpoint side. My kind of running thing, and it was a sales thing, and it was also a legit thing when I talk about, our offering around SaaS alerts, where I would say, okay, well, we typically see maybe 3 compromises a month for endpoints, where we see probably like 8 a week in SaaS. That number has significantly changed.
So, but is it when endpoint, is it straight at the end? Like, is it okay? They're running a VPN and that's the culprit, or just poorly configured EDR? Like,
I can't provide anything additional at the moment, but
Right.
yeah, that's why I popped it in chat, because I can't. I'm still diving through and pulling out additional telemetry around it, but just looking at, for example, the last 30 days, we've had 25 critical alerts around SaaS. So that's confirmed legit compromises for our partner base in the SaaS environment, compared to we AV slash EDR, the system side of it, we're at 21 for the last 30 days. That is a significant increase.
That is. Yeah, that'll be
Now,
cool to come back to see what you're
it doesn't, now keep in mind, it doesn't necessarily mean that the AV or EDR has failed. Some of these are indicators that the adversaries are doing the reconnaissance phase, which is where I love to live when I can, right? Catch them during the reconnaissance. But there's an adversary in the environment trying to detonate something, right? Or exfiltrate something. So it doesn't mean it's a successful incident, but the adversaries have gotten into the environment.
But is it through, are you saying through the endpoint, just so I can clarify?
Correct. So we're seeing activity on the actual endpoints, right? The servers, the workstations, the EDR is now coming into play. So this is past. I mean, obviously we have different layers. So we have a lot of detections around the firewall and adversaries trying to exploit, legacy VPN vulnerabilities. But they're already past that. They're already in the environment, and most of these are coming through VPN vulnerabilities as well.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. In other words, they're heading. Is it possible they're heading towards the endpoint to turn off EDR? Is where I'm
correct. They're already on the endpoint, so there are events either by the AV or by the EDR indicative that there's an adversary attempting some type of incident.
Got it. Yeah, because I love to see the root cause and wondering how much of it still has to do with the original internet facing vulnerability.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can relay majority. When we are able to provide a root cause analysis, majority of them entry points we're still seeing misconfigured firewalls.
Yeah.
Right. OpenRDP still out there like crazy. Direct to the domain controller. We're still seeing people aren't patching their VPN. They're not turning on geofiltering. Right. They're not doing the basics.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify. I was like, are they going direct? It's a direct endpoint. Like it's okay. They're coming through internet facing type misconfigurations, vulnerabilities, and then moving to the EDR, okay.
Correct.
Got it.
Hey, Corey, I got a follow-up question, and I know you don't have all the data, but is there even an anecdotal correlation regarding a higher incidence with folks that are running kind of a hybrid AD setup with either 365 or Google, and there's a weakness part that's coming from the SaaS side? I mean, we don't see the other half of the data that you do, so I'm just curious if there's a correlation there.
I don't have a direct correlation of any of the recent events around that.
Yeah.
We do have, there was a couple that had to do with Azure, and it's not funny, right? But it's interesting that one of the compromises, I don't know if I talked about this before on here, but the adversaries were in one of our partners' Azure environments, and their attack of choice was to spin up thousands of VMs in Azure, and even requests that more processing power, more memory, more disk space, requesting it to Microsoft, and Microsoft was just doing it, turning it on. And the bill got up to around 1.5 million before Microsoft was like, oh, this doesn't look right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
they weren't even using the VMs
to cause economic disruption, or were they using the service?
I mean, again, they weren't even using the VMs to do anything. They were just being jerks, for lack of better words, like, hey, look what I can do, and try to run up the bill for the organization. Typically, when you see something like that, it's a previous disgruntled employee that has more access than what they're supposed to have, and it just wasn't cleaned up properly. But yeah,
That's actually interesting. I had an event, I guess, with Google. No, excuse me, with Azure. No, AWS, the other one, AWS. Like I created an account a couple of years ago when we were demoing an account, whatever it was, sat there dormant for probably 2 years, and suddenly got a bill. So I reached out to their support. Somebody had gotten into the account and created resources. We're still not sure if they were using them or planned to, but I had to jump through hoops with their tech support to go through and turn on all of the alerting in order to justify the fact that we would never have this problem again, even when they knew that I was about to delete the account.
right.
So yeah, people are going and using other people's resources for whatever reason or whatever they can.
Well, we know the reason.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's the
Get
perfect.
me to pay with it so they don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's perfect staging, right? You know, so Andy, what you got?
Question around the incidents that we're seeing more in the SaaS. One of the things that came out in Nerdio was corrupted drivers, not corrupted drivers, but drivers that are maliciously designed to take advantage of Windows. This would be more, I think, of a Jim thing. Is there a way with Fortify or Chip or Liron for us to get feedback from the RMM to say this has got an alert running on it related to a potential issue around patch management or something else that we could trigger sensitivity to SaaS to raise the awareness level because it very easily could move from the device itself into something else out of that.
I'll give you a generic answer, Andy, intentionally. So we are working on deeper integration to device activity on a couple different fronts.
Okay.
So you'll definitely see some, additional changes with SaaS alerts over the next 2 quarters in terms of enhancing capabilities that we already have with the RMMs and looking at some other approaches to monitoring and tracking device data.
Yeah, basically I'm saying, hey, if we all of a sudden know that there's a problem with the device, it'd be great to trigger a shutdown of their login and SaaS alerts and flush them out for a
That's
moment.
precisely the goal.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Tina, do you just a quick question? Did anything else come out of those captchas? I saw you made a comment. I was just curious if you've had more or anything new.
Those were the only 2 captchas last week, but we had another liability. We call him our liability. Scan a QR code yesterday. He's our little buddy that likes to click on everything. So he sent it to us, which was really great, but he sent it to us. And I think this is suspicious. Kale followed up and said, okay, all good. Thanks for checking. And he's like, yeah, I scanned it and it only brought.
Yeah, and then actively testing several things. Yeah.
Yeah. So he scanned it with his phone, like mini mart or something.
Yeah, he scanned it with his phone. He says he just got to a site and then closed out and backed out, but we took him through all the motions, regardless, just to show him how painful and time consuming these incidents can be, regardless of the outcome. So we made sure to reset everything, leave him blocked for a couple hours, make him wipe his phone, and really taught him how much time it can take to deal with this versus checking with us first instead of scanning it.
Hopefully
Yeah, or show
learn
them like what is it, URL scan.io, one of those. To look at things. Yeah.
I have to tell a funny story though. It was that one. When we get these, I send out an email to all of our clients to share with their staff, just for a heads up, like watch out for this, watch out for this, watch out for this. And I took it and I put it in the warning email and I sent it to everybody without blocking out the QR code. And then
So you had the QR code in the email?
Yeah.
Oh, in the example.
And then I said, whoa, okay, maybe don't share that one with everybody. And then I blocked it out and sent it again. So there's my oops of the week.
It's just security awareness training. You're doing your job.
Yeah, you
Don't
can
scan this QR code, everybody, coming from a
you can
trusted
definitely fall back on that one and see how many people fell for it and say you guys failed the test.
Yeah.
Don't eat gas station sushi and don't just scan random QR codes.
Yeah, it's and it's more billable hours for us if you do. So that's how it works. All right. Any others? Let's see. Anything? I saw a chat come up. Anything in there? We had Sam. You want to come on and Sam? Do you want to share or just leave it in chat?
Nah, sorry. I'm just working on slowly unmuting everything. Yeah, so earlier this week, I want to say it was Monday, or rather, we got the ticket come in over the weekend, so played with it Monday first thing. But one of our clients he had like a couple of mystery events on his calendar. He's like, I don't know what these are. Is somebody, on my account or something, like adding just stuff to my calendar? And so like doing some digging and stuff, other people have seen it before, but I guess there's known bugs in Microsoft spam filters, and these people can basically just stick things on calendars without sending like an email invite to have it accept, like accept or decline or anything. But if you interact with that event, it'll then pop up with do you want to notify the event organizer? And it's like, well, if you, decline or delete or interact with this event in any way, they know, hey, this is a valid email. Someone is using this. It's got a calendar attached to it. And it was a super weird thing because I hadn't seen that before. But
Interesting.
So it just appears directly on the calendar, and there's no
it just
corresponding
pops
email
up the
invite?
event on the calendar as if you had gotten the invite, but there's no email in your inbox saying, do you want to accept or decline or anything like that, like we're all used to. It just, the event appeared. I dug through all of the login stuff and Entra and all of that. He's one of our customers. His email's been around long enough. It's out there in the wild, constant password brute force attempts all the time. His email's known, but it's just interesting that I've never seen this attack in any of our environments before.
Chip, could you do something via the graph to make that happen, do you feel, without some type of email? I mean, yeah.
I'm thinking yes, but we'd have to investigate it. But what's scary to me about that, Andrew, is if you can do that and you can actually populate the calendar, you can put attachments on calendar invites. And you can add links for people to click on,
Exactly.
please review this before our meeting. And that could be the starting point for all the attack vectors that, we've become accustomed to.
Yeah, it almost reminds me a little bit of the way that you can have spam that targets like the direct delivery methods in 365. You almost have to block like some sort of tenant to tenant thing almost.
Okay. It's definitely an interesting attack. All right, just based on time, let me let's get on into the SASE report. I just wanted to share one quick thing, and that is so we talk about interesting attacks. We're seeing this one for those of you that have heard of things like SourceForge, which are does version controlling and things, and pretty well known out there, right, Chip? This is one where there's been a threat actor that created a fake version that when you put in the plugin, it will deliver malware instead of doing version control and others. It was shut down, but just interesting, and maybe again notifying some of your customers about plugins and what they're doing, and maybe some governance around that, because this one was one where the threat actor was able to get it was eventually shut down. But anyway, any thoughts on that, Rose, Chip?
I mean, I guess my number one thought isn't really specific to the ruse, but what does jump out at me is it's GitHub again. I'm disturbed by how often GitHub is being used as a vector to spread malware, with people putting projects up there for other people to download and build. Um, it just seems it's bizarre to me that that's this open repository for software developers has become a significant threat in the environment. And no, I don't think it's necessarily a coincidence that GitHub is now a Microsoft product, and just like everything else Microsoft, it becomes a big target.
Yeah. Yeah, very
So
true.
it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But there is like a perceived sort of trust in the platform just because of how many, how widely it's used almost. But that does not necessarily make it safe.
Yep.
All right, Chip, I'll stop sharing, but I just kind of set the stage here that, man, it's amazing. Jim, I remember the 2023 Right a Boom, we mentioned this in the opening, the SASE report.
Yes.
Very different data set 2 years later.
Yeah.
43,000 SMBs. And I mean, just look at the data set these guys have now. It's absolutely mind-blowing how much this has grown just in a few years, Jim.
Yeah, Andrew, if you have the whole deck, you can just continue sharing and we'll just talk through it right
okay,
here.
yeah.
You have the report. We have a different deck for webinars, but for this group, I don't want to take people through the deck because they don't need to hear all the other things about SaaS alerts.
All right, let me get the report. Bear with me 1 second.
Or I can share it. It's good either way.
Okay, yeah. I was going to grab it, but if you have it.
Yeah, to your point though, Andrew, the data set has obviously grown exponentially since 2023.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. I'll never forget our conversation around MFA, our guessing game, and that was fun.
You nailed it on the spot. I remember exactly where I was.
Okay. I presume everybody can see screen.
Sir.
Yes.
All right. So this is the report. It is available for download. Obviously encourage you guys to download it, share it with customers, use it as a sales tool to go out and grab another client in Ireland. Way to go, Bob. So let's run through it. You guys are all familiar with this material, I think, from previous decks, and there are some interesting surprises, if you will, that have popped out. There's some changes. There's also some things that are very, very consistent. As you were just alluding, Andrew, our data set has changed substantially. Pushing 7.5 billion events logged over the course of the year. This is a big change in terms of scope and size. What is interesting to me is sort of how much the data is the same from when the data set was smaller, in the sense of ratios and proportions and the details around the attacks that we're seeing. But there are some changes in here which are worth calling out. So everyone's favorite, where are attacks coming from? So these are unauthorized login attempts. Pretty consistent with previous years. There is a bit of a difference here for people who remember from one year to the next. China remains at the top of the heap. South Korea, India, and Russia were all there before. Australia has replaced Brazil in rounding out the top 5, which is interesting. We always try and interpret some of the whys and wherefores here, and there's no question that in both these attempted logins and also successful unauthorized logins outside approved locations, there's no doubt there's a lot of VPN usage that's going on from the bad actors. What I find interesting is how China just remains at the top of the list. It's almost like they don't care, to even bother with VPNs, because if you look at the numbers, they effectively make up almost as much on their own as the rest of the 4 combined. So it's an interesting piece. I think it's safe to say that all of us should be using conditional access rules to block anything coming from China. Obviously, not enough people are, because we're still seeing a lot of data that's getting that far. So when we flip over to successful unauthorized logins, again, this data is very similar to last year. Germany took a bigger role, but they were in the top 5 last year. India, Philippines, United Kingdom, Poland. This is all pretty consistent with what we've seen in previous years. We know that some of this is misconfiguration in terms of MSPs not properly whitelisting. It's pretty hard for us to do a statistical analysis and figure out exactly what amount is based upon misconfiguration. I would posit a theory that Germany and the UK in particular are likely to be VPN usage from other bad actors who are just bouncing through them to try and cover their tracks. So overall events, still low severity events make up 98.5% roughly of everything that we track, which is good. There's always too much noise. We continue to do more and more things to try and reduce noise in the platform. Nevertheless, over the course of the year, approximately 60 million criticals and 50 million medium alerts in the platform. That's a lot for folks to deal with. I think Respond has helped quite a bit with the automation of dealing with the criticals and the mediums, but nevertheless, there's still big numbers in the raw, but relatively small fractions in the scheme of things. So most common events, the low severity ones, file opens. Backup service transfer is a new one. We started tracking that differently and separately from regular file open events in 2024. So that now shows up as a very, very common, which is a good thing. We're hoping that every MSP out there has their customers backing up their cloud events or the cloud files. And then OAuth access use for forward application. We were talking about that earlier, Andrew, I think before we even started the call, just the proliferation of external applications being used for OAuth. In the 2026 report, 2025 data, we'll have another one in here looking at enterprise apps because we've added enterprise app analysis along with OAuth into the platform. And we'll have enough data collected this year to move that forward. The medium severities, all related to data exfiltration. Limits exceeded on both upload and download for files, and then files opened outside approved location. And Ben, I'd like to ask you on this one, maybe to chime in. You're very close to the events and the post-compromise activity. Would you say that what you guys see on the MSA side, supports the issue that once an attacker does get in, their first set of actions includes data exfiltration? Is that what you're seeing, day to day in the MSA end?
Yeah, mostly data exfiltration through enterprise applications and enterprise apps, just because it's so much easier to do and so much faster. So if they can spin up and have perfect data software EM client on there, it's able to exfiltrate a lot quicker. We saw one instance that actually caused us to create a respond rule, which was they gained access, uploaded a PDF, and then just started massively sharing it out to everybody, which was fun. But yeah, most of the data exfiltration we've seen is a lot through applications.
Okay, critical alerts. These are all what we call OALs, outside approved locations. Again, there's some of this that is misconfiguration of which locations are approved, but a pretty small fraction to that. Obviously, at the top of the list is just the fact that somebody is successfully accessing a SaaS application from an area that's not approved. And then you're right back to data exfiltration as the next two things that are going to occur. The file open one I find interesting because that matches up with what we have talked about consistently here, is how sophisticated the bad actors are getting at doing their reconnaissance. They want to get in and open files and look for relationships between end users and their customers and their suppliers and take advantage of those kinds of details. And by the way, Jim, we got another great phishing phishing campaign, that originated from you today. I don't know if you saw that, but you
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
stop. You have to stop doing that, Jim. You're phishing inside your own company.
I know. Well, I want the executive training that they're offering. So
I get text messages from him all the time asking for gift cards, and
yeah.
he never says thank you when I give them to him.
With that, guys, I gotta jump off, but I'll see everyone soon. Thanks.
See you, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay, apps driving the most critical alerts. There's really no change here in the big picture. Microsoft, obviously, we have the most overall logged events. Google is not a close second, but a second here. But just like last year, very interestingly, the ratio of critical events to logged events is led by Slack. We had the same exact situation last year. Andrew, I think when we went through this last year, you said, well, why is that? And I said, I have no idea. And I still really don't know why that is. I suspect that just because of the user population of Slack and how it can be so it's almost a chat app, right? It's more chatty than Teams, I think, which is why people like it more. And people will have a tendency to use it, when they're traveling more and access their Slack from regions where they shouldn't necessarily, be communicating with their business tools, and that's throwing a lot of OALs relative to Slack.
Hey, Chip, if I may, if I was a bad actor, Slack would be my target. Because if I can get into Slack, I can message Chip and I can say, hey, Chip, I need to log into this sensitive system. Get me in there. We kind of trust the messages that we get from people in Slack. So I think it's a great target.
Yeah, it's a great point, Leron. We've talked about this in earlier calls with Andrew about, companies should have some kind of an identity verification system, even inside of Teams or Slack or other things, to make sure that before you pass sensitive information, you know who you're talking to. And we do that inside SaaS alerts just as a routine part of how we run the business. So the time to detect and contain breaches, really hasn't changed in the big picture. 292 days now, which is up from, I think, 248 is the sort of general standard among IT organizations on how long it takes to both detect and attack and remediate a breach. In our case, as you guys know, using Respond, we have that down to in many cases minutes, certainly hours, for a response to take place and to shut down an active compromised account. So we think that part of our software is working very well, and you guys coming here with your wins of the week as often as you do definitely supports that. Here's a good one for you, Andrew. What do you notice on this slide?
Let's see. Certainly an increase in MFA.
Yeah, so we have about a 4%, 4.5% increase in MFA adoption, which, may not sound like a lot to us, but I think it's definitely an indication that the message is getting out there. It's obviously not just this group that's pushing the message, but sort of globally among business application SaaS users, it's getting better and better. And hopefully we see a corresponding reduction in successful SaaS attacks as a result of this. I'd love to say that's why Corey and Zach are seeing more in the endpoint, but I don't think it's really related. But we're headed in the right direction. So, for this group, keep up the good work, everybody. Unmonitored guest accounts. This is one of our favorites. This is not as big a problem as it once was for SaaS alerts specifically, because our partners have been great at using the automation, using Respond rules to automatically suspend or block guest accounts so that they can't be a vector. But the ratio of guest accounts to actually licensed user accounts is still very, very high. And if you think about this on an industry-wide spectrum, there's definitely a continued risk and threat vector that you have guest accounts out there that no one's paying attention to that can get hacked because no one's paying attention to them. And they can lead to further compromise once someone's inside a tenant. Okay, SaaS to SAP integrations. We've seen quite a bit of change here actually from last year. The two big ones that jump out are on the Microsoft side, the Barracuda Azure AD Sync, and on the Google, the Syscloud Security and Backup. These are brand new players, if you will, in the SaaS to SaaS app integrations, and positive ones. I would think that we have more and more people who are implementing backup and secondary security tools. I find it interesting the top two, Apple Internet Accounts for Microsoft and iOS Account Manager. That's new data this year. They were both represented farther down the list. But this list is, the 1 through 5 is labeled in terms of the numerical numbers in each of these stacks. No before security awareness
Excuse me,
training.
Chip, with that,
Yeah.
I'm curious. So you mentioned the gateway. Is it just the fact that it's being used a lot more, or there's something special that we can monitor and keep track of within that application?
No, Gary, it's not that there's something special that we can necessarily monitor. This is just an interesting data point on how we see a shift going on in what secondary applications people are connecting to from both 365 and Google Workspace. Know Before is a new entry here, and I think a good one. Auditor by Securely on the Google side, that's a new entry here. The Adobe piece, Canvas, those were sitting here before. Both of the iOS pieces, Canva on the Google Workspace side, and Booklet is actually an education facing app. So that kind of makes sense because we do have some sizable customers in the education realm now. Okay. I think this is a new number from last year. We decided to look at file shares in terms of just the overall volume. There's good news here that there's more internally shared activity than there is externally. And I think on the next slide, we actually break this out, Google versus Microsoft, and there's an interesting difference there. But externally shared files are still a risk, even when they're legitimately shared, because often people don't take the time to expire those shares or restrict those shares properly. So something to still message through with your customers. I would definitely use this slide, in selling situations and in security awareness training with your customers to help them really think about, do we really want to be sharing a lot of data outside of our environment? I mean, these numbers are huge, obviously. 51 million files shared is across the entire structure of all the data that we have. But nevertheless, it's pretty representative of what you would see in a business in terms of this, 80-50 split in terms of internal and external file shares. So this is the slide that I find interesting. If you look at the difference between Microsoft and Google in terms of external file shares, and we don't have any data that supports a theory, that I would want to get behind. So I'll leave it to folks' interpretation. I'll say as both a Google Workspace user over a couple different companies and also 365, that the sharing methodology in Google seems to steer one more toward not sharing files outside. And Microsoft just makes that much easier, particularly with Teams as the secondary sharing mechanism. And let's face it, there's not a whole lot of people that are sharing files through Google Meet. Okay, so what are we watching in 2025? I don't think this has really changed at all. The number one thing that we were watching in 2024 was Phishing-as-a-Service. We've spent a lot of time on this. I saw Ben smirk as soon as this slide came up because I think this is his favorite level of expertise and playground is the phishing and the service tools. And Ben, maybe you can just review, even though we've talked about some of them before, there are new tools that have come into place in 2024 and that you're seeing in 2025. You want to comment on any of those in terms of their capabilities and how those things have changed?
Yeah, I did a little bit of research from the show and that we're going to do and connect. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of different types and that are out there that are some readily available. Sometimes you have to purchase them. But there are also ones that make device code phishing extremely easy too. But yeah, there's all sorts of projects just to make this whole thing a lot easier and a lot more automated. it's effective. It works. It's the easy way in.
So how many different tools are you actively researching at this point? Is it 4? Is it a half dozen? Is it?
I think I had like 6 or 7 on my list. Yeah. Some
So
of them are older, some of them are newer, but I mean, there, Bleeping Computer put an article out there the other day or a couple weeks ago, said, Evil Jinx still able to fish all this time, and that thing hasn't been updated in like almost a year.
yeah, so that's kind of the granddaddy, but
Yeah.
we've seen proliferation of other tools that function similarly and add additional capability, right?
hmm Yeah, I think some of them are geared more towards just gathering credentials. Some are more for, this is the client that I want to attack. This is I want to really stay in here and learn about them and go for the long haul. But some of them are just gathering credentials to be sold. Like that one we saw in what is it, Arizona. That one seems to be its only goal is just to get creds, and then we see attacks coming from much different places geographically.
So the whole point behind the phishing tools is our other favorite, token hijacks. These continue. The remedies or the prevention is continuing to evolve in terms of especially what Microsoft is doing with safe grant tokens, but still a major threat. Still, I think the primary vector that we see when accounts actually do get compromised, it is token hijacking, typically triggered by a phishing kit. Previously from the previous slide, you'd say that's accurate, Ben?
Yeah, there's also, you can, even on their GitHub, you can combine Go Fish with Evil Jinx, and they actually work together quite nicely to automate the phishing and the token theft for you.
How sweet.
I know, right? It makes it easy for you.
So the rest of this, I don't think we're going to run through here. This would be boilerplate for everyone on this call in terms of, what you should be doing. This is a group that takes the necessary steps and is deeply embedded, but absolutely, take advantage of the deck itself, the recommendations here. Get this in front of your customers. We encourage you to share it. That's why we do it, is to give you guys tools to sell and tools to continue the education piece. So Ben and I have about a minute and a half to take questions, and then we actually have to jump to a public webinar to present this same deck. So any thoughts, any questions from anyone? Okay. Andrew, I think we're going to leave it in your capable hands to run it out. And Ben, I will see you on our next Zoom call in a
That
minute.
sounds good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chip. Thanks,
Thanks,
Ben.
guys. Excellent.
All right, everybody. If does anybody have, well, we're losing everybody, so I think we'll wrap it up for today, Anthony. But wishing you all a great week, and look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.